welcome again to another episode of the Comfortable Couch Show here on YouTube. It's also on podcast on Spotify and Apple. My name is Mark Underwood. I am your host, and I am broadcasting to you actually all the way from Djibouti, North Africa. I am currently working as a military family life counselor at Camp Lemonnier in Djibouti, at least until the end of the summer. And I'm come to you with the goal of making things make sense from the counseling world, from the world of psychotherapy, bringing things down to a common denominator that you can use and make your life better. And today I think we're going to do it's going to be my first two-parter, because the subject matter I've chose is a little difficult to squeeze into one, and I don't frankly think that if I was listening, I don't want to do an hour and 10 minutes. I'd rather break it into halves. You know, that's why you split a meeting in halves. Hey, listen, you want a break? It's hard to sit through a long presentation, anything. So this week what I'm doing is what I call the Two-Headed Coin of Codependence. And I'm going to do the heads, and next episode will be tails. And I'm going to explain this. Codependence is one of those terms that gets thrown around a lot. It gets thrown around a lot in my profession, and it gets thrown around in the common lexicon out in public and in the common world. And I don't think very many people have a real clear grasp of what it means. And for sure, there are people who are a little more educated about therapy and would say, well, I have some concept that it's a term for some kind of some kind of behavior that involves taking care of or enabling someone who has a drug problem, or an alcoholic spouse, or, an alcoholic family member. And there's some truth to that. But most of the time when I ask people about or mention the term codependence, what they do is they usually guess that it's too much emotional dependence on their wife, husband, fiance, boyfriend, girlfriend, partner. And I don't think that's quite where we're going with this. I'm going to completely renegade here today and suggest a very simple but unique definition of what codependence is and how it's created and how it affects us, that I guarantee you probably haven't heard before. Why? Because it's one I've kind of developed and come to all by myself over the last few years. So let me throw this at you. The first side of the codependent coin is a belief that you're acting the way you are because of me, and it's my fault you're acting that way. Well, that may not make a lot of sense right off the bat. So let's get into this. Let's play with this a little bit. Let me start with a story. Let's take a 7-year-old little boy. Let's call him little Jimmy. Now, little Jimmy is 7, and he drew some bad cards when he was born. Because, I always say that all human misery comes from 2 points. One, you don't pick your parents. You just pop out into somebody's arms, and if you get, 2 very emotionally healthy architects from Aberdeen, Washington, who have lots of love and lots of resources to give to that little baby, why, you've unwrapped the gold Wonka bar ticket. And if you've fallen into the arms of a depressed, addicted teen mother with a father who's incarcerated in, Connorsville, Indiana, you got a problem. You're already $100,000 in the red, and you're going to have a hard time working out of that because you don't have any resources to work with at all. So let's start out with little Jimmy, little 7-year-old Jimmy here. He's got a mother who is very anxious and depressed and very timid and not a strong presence in the family, because we're not going to talk about her after that. Problem is his father. His father is an alcoholic. And His father ranges from disinterested and distant most of the time. But when dad drinks and gets hammered, maybe 2 or 3 times a week, he does it on Thursday night after bowling, and he does it on the weekend one night. And mom doesn't like it, and it gets mom all worked up, and mom cries and tries to figure out, gets involved. But when he gets rip-roaring drunk, he's not a happy drunk. No, Jimmy's dad is an angry drunk who needs to take out his own self-loathing on others, as alcoholics tend to do. They usually can't keep all their self-hatred contained in their own borders. They ended up shooting it on somebody else, blasting somebody else with it. So when he comes home from the bowling alley on Thursday night, or he's had too many brewskis on Saturday afternoon watching college football, or whatever it is that causes him to go off the rails and drink too much, he's prone to dumping some raging anger on whoever's around. Now, you and I both know that a 7-year-old is going to do some dumb stuff. And he's going to rightfully trigger frustration, anger, even in sober, emotionally healthy parents, because that's what kids do. Because kids are consumers, and kids are needy, and they like to put pressure on parents. So little Jimmy's an easy target anyways, because he can't fight back. And so dad comes home blitzed, and Jimmy's just there. Little Jimmy's there, so he gets the heat blast. And dad gets agitated and screams at him and says, you know, you're a stupid little kid. You don't ever do anything right. And maybe he even drops occasionally the whole, I wish I never had you blast. Over time, little Jimmy is getting some really negative reflections from dad. He's getting whacked pretty hard. So what's a 7-year-old going to do with this? You've got somebody that you profoundly need them. Your whole identity is built on what this man thinks of you. Well, your mom too, but well, Jimmy's going to expect that dad's going to tell him, well, he's a man, I'm a little boy, and we're on the same team here. So he'll tell me whether I'm good, or he'll know even more than mom will, whether I'm good or bad. And he's going to say, wow, dad really dislikes me. Dad really dislikes me. And then he's going to think, the way a 7-year-old would, just, well, all daddies love their little boys. Well, why wouldn't they love their little boys? I mean, I would just assume all parents love their little kids. I mean, why would you have them? You don't love them. I mean, all kids have an expectation that their parents will love them, unless they've been trained otherwise. So he's going to think, well, my dad doesn't love me, so either I must be bad, or I'm not doing the things that will make him love me. In fact, I think I'm the one who's making him drink. I don't really understand this drinking thing, but whatever it is bad, and I must be the cause of it. Well, the inherent narcissism of a 7-year-old isn't deliberate. It's kind of natural. And I can tell you that anytime that parents get divorced and I see the kid always assumes that he or she is the reason for it. And it won't make any sense, because you're going, well, wait a minute. So the child will say, well, I guess I wasn't good enough for them to stay together. I didn't make them happy enough to stay together. It's just a natural way. A 10, 12, 14-year-old. I've had recently a 17-year-old who took, responsibility for the parents' divorce and said, it's my fault. Because a kid would never understand the reasons why 2 adults would not want to stay together. A 7-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 14, a 16, they're not going to understand. They're not going to understand the struggle and the pressures of trying to understand and coordinate life with the opposite sex. They're not going to understand the pressures of money or in-laws, or they're not going to understand the romantic sexual component. They're not going to understand infidelity. They're not going to understand any of that. They haven't lived it. They don't know. All they know is themselves. They have no life experience in the adult world. So the kids always think it's them. They just have zero understanding of why adults would, first of all, be together, but second of all, why they would divorce. So here we go. It's the same thing here. Jimmy has no understanding of why his dad would drink. He just doesn't. He doesn't understand it. He wouldn't have the understanding at 7 that he might have at 27, which hopefully he might get, but that, hey, the reason that my dad is an alcoholic is because he was molested when he was 10 as an altar boy. Or the reason my dad is an alcoholic is because he's just never wanted to be an adult. He's an overgrown child. And he resents having to do grown-up things. He would rather play and have fun. He would rather, my dad is an overgrown child who would rather going out and being promiscuous and drinking heavy and partying and living like a single guy. But now he has to go to work every day, and he's got pressures, and he's got responsibility. He's got to pay a mortgage. He's got to pay health insurance. And he resents that. So drinking is his way out of that. Or maybe dad just was kind of a pleasure-seeking guy, and he just got used to drinking a lot, and he just likes to get sloshed. It just feels good to get drunk. He just likes the feeling of being free and out of control. Or maybe dad has some kind of social anxiety, and the only time he feels, comfortable socially in his own skin is when he's had plenty of pops and he's got that buzz and he's loose and he's feeling kind of free. But Jimmy's not going to have any understanding of alcoholism or any kind of adult intrapsychic dynamics of whatever could be underneath, whatever depression or anxiety or personality disorder that causes alcoholism. So he couldn't possibly come up with any kind of logical, theoretical explanation of why his dad's an alcoholic. So what is Jimmy going to do? Jimmy is going to say, this is because of me. This is because of me. Because we don't know why his dad's an alcoholic. Probably take a therapist a while to figure it out. I might be able to figure out. Dad comes in, he'd probably tell me, right? He'd tell me, I've had 5 in the 5th generation of alcoholics, and it's just what we always do, and it's what I saw my dad did, and it seemed right to me, whatever. I mean, who knows? Well, I know who doesn't know, and that's little Jimmy. So Jimmy will take responsibility for his father's beliefs, his behaviors, his values. He's going to consume those he's going to take it all in. It's all going to be about Jimmy. Not blaming little Jimmy, just telling you this is how depression starts. Because as soon as Jimmy takes responsibility for what his dad did, why, the poison's delivered. It's now in the bloodstream. He's not going to realize this, but he's going to develop a defective sense of self because of this taking responsibility. He's not going to, 7-year-old's not going to go, God, my dad's really a jerk. It's not my fault he's drinking. I already know that. It's not my fault. I didn't have anything to do with this. No 7-year-old's going to do that. But if a 7-year-old can do that, I'm really impressed. I would be amazed. It's not what happens. The dependence that a 7-year-old feels, or any kid feels on their parent, there's kind of a desperation there to get their approval. That'd be a pretty independent thing to look at your father when you're, in 2nd grade and go, you're just not a very good person. You're not somebody I can trust. I don't like you, and it's not my fault you're that way. No. It's not what happens. So this feeling of being the cause of all this anger and these outbursts and these insults and this rejection is going to sink deep into the developmental self of this little boy. He's going to assume that the reflections he's getting from dad are spot on the money. They have to be. I mean, all daddies love their little boys, and my dad doesn't seem to love me. So it's got to be my fault. It's got to be my fault. Now, what's the problem with this in the long run? Well, the long run is that this is a distorted interpretation of who his dad is, but there's no other interpretation he could come to, right? And what he's ending up doing here is he's objectifying his father. Now, what I mean by objectifying is he's making him a non-person. He's saying, no, my dad he's not doing this deliberately, but he's saying, no, my dad doesn't really have any personality or independent beliefs or values of his own. I create those. I create who he is. He's acting that way because of me. He's not acting that way because of him, because I don't know, I can't conceive of him being that way. All I know is he's got to be an extension of me, a reflection of me. So when my dad yells and screams at me, it doesn't say anything about him. It doesn't say anything about his lack of self-control, his lack of emotional maturity, his lack of accepting responsibility. Well, I don't understand. No, it says everything about me. That's an accurate reflection he's giving me. It's got to be. So I'm bad, or I'm defective. And so now little Jimmy has developed a very distorted sense of self-esteem that's going to get more and more malignant over time. It's going to take over and get in the bloodstream and really wind deep into his developing personality. So this trait that we all have this trait, because we've all been 7 and we've all been 9 and we've all had people give us negative reflections. Whatever parental deficit we've experienced, we take responsibility for. Now, if the deficits aren't that great and they aren't that traumatic, I don't think we're necessarily stuck with them. They don't maybe crystallize and cause us to be some depressed person that walks around, like Eeyore, and assuming that everything's going to be bad and that we're not worth, nothing good's going to ever happen and there's something wrong with us. Maybe not. But that trait is built in us. It may not be an app that runs all the time on your phone, but it's one that's on your phone and you can kick it in when you need it or when you don't need it, but it might kick in. So it can carry on to our adult lives. So let's play with it, not only with our parents. I mean, for sure, if Jimmy doesn't do something when he's 25, he's still going to assume that he's going to still want his dad's approval. Let me tell you, he's going to chase his dad's approval till somebody intervenes or until his dad dies. That's the way it's going to be. And he's going to replicate this codependent pattern. This is the first side of the coin, that my dad acts that way because of me. He's going to replicate that in his other relationships. And he's going to believe that others act and feel the way they do because of him. And this is going to be almost like a magical power. Like other people, I can control them. I magically have control over them. Now, it's not in a good way, not with the first side of the coin. The first side of the coin is just they act the way they do because of my lack of worth or because of my defectiveness. I'm causing people to do this. So, okay, so let's carry this out. So Jimmy has problems in high school and teachers don't always respond right. Well, he's going to assume that it's not that the teachers are the usual frustrated, overworked, underpaid. Nah, it's because of me. They don't like me. There's something wrong with me. I just bring out the worst in people. And he's 20 and he's at college. He manages to get into college. He's a middling college student. He finds out his girlfriend's cheating with one of his buddies. What's he going to do? He's going to take this coin out of his pocket and shine it. And he's going to go right back to heads. He's going to say, well, this isn't that she's a bad person. No, this has got to be something wrong with me. I must not have been a good enough man. I must not have been manly enough to satisfy her. I must not have been romantic enough or good looking enough or a good kisser, or I wasn't athletic enough, or I wasn't kind enough. And she's going to get a free pass. Now, I've had this happen a bunch. I got to tell you, it's almost an instinctive thing. When someone has an affair, the other person almost always immediately assumes responsibility for the affair. I had a thing recently where somebody was just completely off the rails, the other person, with very promiscuous, just really outrageous behavior. And my person took complete responsibility. My client took complete responsibility for it. Complete. It's not their fault. It's that I'm emotionally unavailable. I'm not capable of being in this relationship. I didn't meet any of their needs. What choice did they have but to cheat with multiple other people and lie and con me and steal from me? And I can't blame them. I'm just a miserable human being. No, you've just given them a complete free pass, and it's like the other person is non-person. Well, wait a minute. They did all this. Yeah, but they did it because of me. They did it because of me. They didn't do it because of them. They're not bad. I'm bad. They're not dishonest. I'm just not worth much. I'm just not worth much. If I'd have been a better person, then they wouldn't do this. So little Jimmy, here's what little Jimmy's going to do when he's 7. He's going to say, well, I think I can get my dad. I'm going to try hard. I'm going to do something about this. Now that's going to lead into the second part of this, because I'm going to say that's the tails coin of the coin, the tail side. The head side is simply, I'm blaming myself for what other people do towards me. I'm taking it all. I can't give them any responsibility because I've just learned that it's all about me. And there's something wrong with me. I'm just such a miserable person. I make other people cheat on me. I make other people dislike me and abuse me. I make other people steal from me. I make them do everything. I have this magic power. I don't think it's a good thing, but I've got this remote control. I can control other people. Their behavior is because of me, not because of them. If I could only learn to manage this magic remote control. And that's what we're going to go to with part 2, right? So I want you to be very clear with this. The two-headed coin of codependence. Side number 1 is they are acting that way because of me. They drink too much because I make them drink too much. They cheat because I make them cheat. They act terribly and disrespectfully because I must not be a good enough parent. They act that way because of me. I'm making this happen. And this is one of the roots of depression. Taking responsibility for somebody. I call this the 90% rule. It's really the 100% rule, but the 100% rule doesn't sound nearly as catchy as the 90% rule. The 90% rule, but really the 100% rule is depression and anxiety, 90%, but really 100%, come from taking responsibility for somebody else's thoughts, beliefs, actions, values, habits, likes, dislikes, lifestyle choices. No, it's not them, it's me. I'm making them do it. So to unwind depression, we got to do something with this first side of the coin. We're going to say, wait a minute. I got little Jimmy in therapy when he's 30. Dad's a drinker. Tell me how you can make him drink. Tell me how you made him drink. How could you do that? And we all know this is a fantasy, by the way, because I can tell you, nobody can make me do anything I don't want to do. People have tried over the years. I'm quite stubborn, let me tell you. And you can't make somebody do anything. I can't make my wife cheat on me, and she can't make me cheat on her. She can't make me become an alcoholic. I've had 5 beers in my whole life, probably. That's not going to happen. Nobody can control. But it's not a belief that stands up to the test of time, but it's a belief that's pretty entrenched. So I want you to think about this. How much of your own depressive thoughts, how much of your own inner world is based on this belief, this first half of the first side of the coin, that other people have acted the way they do because of me? Your childhood experiences that weren't good. You're being picked on in school. They really didn't like, they were picking on me because they were established a pecking order, because that's what kids going through puberty do. No, I was really defective. How much of this, I want you to be honest with yourself, how much of this comes from this whole thing, taking responsibility for somebody else's thoughts, beliefs, actions, values, habits, likes, dislikes, choices, lifestyle choices? this is how you're going to start undoing and flushing out all this poison that's inside you if you're depressed. And I would say 60% of the people walking around on the planet are dysthymic, which means low-level persistent depressive disorder. I'm not good enough. I didn't get my parents' approval. There must be something wrong with me. I'm a perfectionist. I've got to get it perfect to be worth anything. Right? Whatever, right? This is the way it is. This is the way it is. So this is side one of the coin. I want you to polish it up and look at it real good. They're acting that way because of me. Not because of them, because of me. I'm making them act this way. That's the first defective, distorted belief that's ingrained in us that causes depression, that causes relationships to go askew. So, listen, we're going to stop there. I'm going to jump back on with part two with the other side of the coin. We're going to flip the coin over and go to tails. But listen, this is what I want you to know this. If you like the podcast, subscribe, great. Not trying to make any money off this. This is something I do because there aren't enough therapists around. And that's another podcast episode, how to pick a therapist. I'm getting ready to do that one pretty soon too. But there's a waiting list most places for therapists. Can't get in, can't see them. When I left my group practice last year, there was a 2-page single-space sheet of people trying to get in. And they weren't getting in because the only person that was taking new clients was me, and I was booked. And there certainly aren't enough effective therapists, and there's enough effective communication out there explaining depression and how not to be depressed, or explaining anxiety. My last episode was on the 3 not-so-amigos of anxiety. Not enough of this. Needs to be more. So I want to provide that. Now, if you want to go to my website, thecomfortablecouchshow.com, and you want to send me a question, you want to email me a question, I'll do a mailback episode. Also, my book, Toxic Words, 20 Things You Should Never Say to Yourself. There's a link to purchase that on Amazon, but it is actually available for free on Kindle Unlimited. And it's on YouTube if you want to listen to it. This has been voiced in on YouTube. But the book's available. Love for you to read it. Tell me what you think. Again, listen, this is Mark Underwood signing off. And like I always sign off, I want you to keep your thoughts clear, straight, and true. And be aware of this coin, because we're going to talk about it again in the next episode. Thanks again. Signing off. Appreciate it. See you next time. Bye.
Don't stop trying now. Right.